The crystal champagne flute trembles in my hand as I watch my stepfather Richard take the stage. The retirement gala sparkles around us, a testament to 30 years of building Silverstone media from nothing. My heart pounds with anticipation. After a decade of 70-hour weeks and sacrificed relationships, tonight everything changes. I'm Autumn, and I've spent my entire adult life preparing for this moment. Friends, colleagues, family, Richard begins, his voice carrying across the grand ballroom. Tonight marks not just an ending, but a beginning. The crowd of 300 falls silent. I straighten my spine, smoothing down my midnight blue dress. Next to me, my half-brother Tyler fidgets with his bow tie, his usual cocky smirk replaced by an unusual intensity. Silverstone Media has been my life's work, Richard continues. But every empire needs new blood, fresh vision. He pauses, his eyes scanning the crowd. That's why I'm proud to announce that, effective immediately, my son Tyler will be taking over as Chief Executive Officer. The champagne flute slips from my numb fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Heads turn. Whispers ripple through the crowd. My mother Lily won't meet my eyes. Tyler brings exactly what this company needs to face the challenges ahead. Richard's words hammer nails into my coffin of dreams. Youth, innovation, and most importantly, the right instincts for leadership. Applause erupts. Tyler bounds onto stage, all practiced charm and perfect teeth. I remain rooted in place, shards of crystal crunching under my heels. Speech, someone calls out. Tyler grabs the microphone, basking in the spotlight that should have been mine. I promise to make Silverstone Media stronger than ever, he declares, to honor my father's legacy while blazing new trails. My colleague Derek appears at my elbow. This can't be happening, he mutters. Everyone knows you're the one who... Not now, I cut him off, plastering on a smile as cameras flash. Inside, acid burns through my chest. Later, during the endless, congratulatory mingling, I corner Richard near the bar. Why? The single word carries a decade of betrayal. He sighs, swirling his scotch. Business isn't just about hard work, Autumn. It's about instinct, natural leadership. Tyler has that spark. Tyler has barely worked a full week in his life. He doesn't know the first thing about running this company. He'll learn, and you'll help him, won't you? Richard's tone carries steel beneath the request. For the good of the family, I want to scream, to expose every time Tyler's natural leadership meant pawning his work off on others. Instead, I nod stiffly. Of course. Across the room, I spot my grandmother Evelyn holding court with board members, probably already spinning this disaster into dynasty-building brilliance. My mother hovers nearby, champagne glass perpetually full. There's my favorite sister. Tyler's arm lands heavy across my shoulders. He reeks of expensive cologne and victory. Ready to show me the ropes? I extract myself from his embrace. Congratulations, Tyler. You must be so proud. Hey, no hard feelings, right? Dad knows what he's doing. And you're still part of the team. Part of the team. After 10 years of building client relationships, streamlining operations, and practically running things while Richard focused on the big picture. Now I get to teach my frat boy brother how to do my job. Of course, I say smoothly. No hard feelings at all. I excuse myself to the powder room, locking the door behind me. In the mirror, my reflection stares back. Composed, professional, the perfect corporate soldier. But something dark flickers behind my eyes. They want me to help Tyler. Fine, I'll help him straight into the ground. I'll watch everything Richard built crumble under his golden boy's incompetent hands. And when it's all ashes, they'll finally understand what they threw away. I reapply my lipstick, adjust my smile, and return to the party. After all, I have a lot to teach my dear brother about running a company. Starting with exactly how much he doesn't know. The morning after the gala, I find my mother in her garden, methodically deadheading roses like nothing's changed. Her perfectly manicured nails snip through stems with practiced precision. She doesn't look up when I approach. Did you know? The words taste like battery acid. Snip. Another dead bloom falls. Richard made his decision, Autumn. We need to respect that. That's not what I asked. My hands clench into fists. Did you know he was going to humiliate me in front of everyone? She finally meets my eyes, her expression carefully neutral. Tyler is Richard's son, the company is his legacy. And what am I? The backup plan, the workhorse who gets discarded when it's convenient. Don't be dramatic. She moves to another rosebush. You still have your position. Nothing's really changed. A bitter laugh escapes me. Nothing's changed. He gave my promotion to Tyler, who can barely handle his own expense reports without help. Your brother has potential. He just needs guidance. She pauses, her voice softening. This could be good for both of you, working together, supporting each other. Supporting each other. My voice rises. Where was his support when I was working 60-hour weeks? When I missed Christmas because of the Miller account? When... Autumn, my grandmother Evelyn's sharp voice cuts through my tirade. She stands in the garden doorway, elegant as ever in her tailored pantsuit. That's quite enough. Your mother doesn't need this hysteria. Of course not. I turn to face her. Heaven forbid anyone disturb the family peace by pointing out inconvenient truths. The truth, Evelyn says coldly, is that Richard built this company from nothing. He has every right to choose its future leadership. The truth is that Tyler's going to run it into the ground, and you're all too blinded by tradition to see it. Perhaps, she replies, if you'd spent more time cultivating relationships instead of spreadsheets, things might be different. The barb hits its mark. I remember all the family dinners I missed, the social events I skipped, always putting the company first, thinking it would prove my worth. You mean if I'd played politics better? I ask quietly. Smiled more? Been more like Tyler? Your brother understands people, my mother interjects. He has natural charisma. He has natural charm and zero work ethic, I snap. But sure, let's pretend that's leadership. Evelyn's eyes narrow. Mind your tone, young lady. This attitude isn't helping anyone. No? I laugh. Well, neither is pretending everything's fine while Tyler destroys what I've spent 10 years building. What Richard spent 30 years building, Evelyn corrects sharply. Don't overstate your importance. The words slice deep. I see my mother flinch, but she says nothing. Always the peacekeeper, never taking sides. My phone buzzes, a message from Derek about an emergency client meeting Tyler's already missed. Of course. You know what? I straighten my spine. You're right. I should focus on what's important, like making sure your precious golden boy doesn't bankrupt us in his first week. Autumn, please. My mother reaches for my arm. Can't we just what, Mum? Pretend everything's fine? Play happy families while watching Tyler destroy everything? I pull away. Sorry, but I learned from the best about putting the company first. Evelyn's voice follows me as I stride away. Richard was right about your temperament. This is exactly why. I don't hear the rest. Don't need to. Their expectations and disappointments have always spoken louder than words. Back in my car, I grip the steering wheel until my knuckles turn white. My phone buzzes again. 3 missed calls from Tyler, probably needing me to bail him out of whatever mess he's already created. Fine. They want me to support Tyler. I'll support him right off a cliff. Let them see exactly what happens when they bet everything on the wrong horse. I start the engine, a plan already forming. Richard taught me everything about building a company. Now I'll use those lessons to tear it all down. My mother's roses disappear in the rearview mirror, blood-red petals scattered across perfectly manicured grass. Sometimes you have to prune deep to fix what's broken, and I'm done playing in someone else's garden. The quarterly reports spread across my desk tell a story that makes my blood run cold. Not because of what they show, but because of what they hide. 3 months of subtle irregularities, carefully masked transfers, and project reassignments that all point to one truth. Richard has been systematically setting Tyler up to fail. These numbers don't add up. Derek leans over my shoulder, frowning at the screen. The Morrison account shows double the projected expenses, but half the staff allocation. I pull up another document. Look at this. Every major account Tyler's supposedly managing was restructured before the handover. Richard stripped out the support staff, removed the safety nets. While making it look like business as usual, Derek whistles low. That's cold, even for Richard. He's creating a perfect storm. My fingers trace the patterns of destruction hidden in plain sight. Tyler won't see it coming until it's too late. A knock interrupts us. Maya stands in the doorway, perfectly composed as always. Tyler's looking for you. The Jensen presentation starts in 20 minutes. The presentation he was supposed to prepare last week? I close the files quickly. The same. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. He mentioned something about needing your expert touch on the numbers. Of course he does. I grab my laptop, mind racing. Derek, can you... Already on it. He taps his tablet meaningfully. I'll dig deeper into those discrepancies. The executive conference room buzzes with tension when I arrive. Tyler paces by the window, his usual swagger replaced by barely concealed panic. There you are. He grabs my arm. Look, I know this is last minute, but I really need you to. Take over the presentation. I finish flatly. Just help me look good. His smile wavers. Dad's calling in, and after last week's mishap with the Miller contract. You mean when you forgot to review the terms and nearly cost us the account? Details. He waves dismissively. Come on, sis, we're family. Family. The word tastes bitter now. I think of the doctored reports, of Richard's elaborate trap, of Tyler walking blindly into it. Fine. I pull up the presentation I knew I'd end up giving, but we do this my way. The meeting starts rough and gets worse. Tyler fumbles basic questions, contradicts himself, and keeps looking to me with increasingly desperate eyes. I feed him answers, watch him stumble through them, and feel something shift inside me. Richard's face on the video call remains impassive, but I see the calculation behind his eyes. He's watching his plan unfold exactly as designed. Perhaps, Richard interrupts Tyler's latest rambling response. Autumn could clarify the projection models. And there it is, the perfect moment to expose everything. The manipulation, the setup, the inevitable crash he's orchestrating. I could save Tyler from what's coming, or, actually, I smile, I think Tyler should walk us through his vision for the account's future development. Tyler freezes. Richard's eyebrows lift slightly. In the silence that follows, I see the moment Tyler realizes he's completely out of his depth. The meeting ends in polite disaster. As executives file out, Maya lingers, her expression thoughtful. Interesting strategy, she murmurs, letting him sink rather than saving him. Sometimes people need to learn their own lessons. Her laugh is soft. Is that what we're calling it? Back in my office, Derek's waiting with more findings. It's worse than we thought. Richard's been systematically... I know. I cut him off, staring at the city beyond my window. He's orchestrating Tyler's failure to prove a point. So, what are you going to do? Tell Tyler? I think of my brother's desperate eyes in that meeting, of Richard's calculated manipulation, of my mother's roses and grandmother's dismissal. No. I turn back to my desk, pulling up the files that will seal Tyler's fate. I'm going to help them both get exactly what they want. Autumn, Derek's voice carries a warning. Richard wants to teach Tyler a lesson about leadership. I start typing. Fine, let's give them both an education they'll never forget. The quarterly reports glow on my screen, their hidden messages now clear as day. Richard thinks he's the only one who can play this game. He's about to learn otherwise. Sometimes the best revenge isn't stopping someone's plans. It's helping them succeed in all the wrong ways. Sleep hasn't come easily since I discovered Richard's manipulation. Tonight, I stand at my apartment window, watching city lights blur through a glass of bourbon when my phone vibrates. A message from an unknown number. Check your email. You're not the only one he's playing. The attached files make my hands shake. Employee records, performance reviews, a pattern spanning years before Tyler, before me. Other promising executives, carefully groomed, then systematically destroyed. Couldn't sleep either. Derek's voice comes through when I call. I was about to... Did you send these files? A pause. What files? I forward them while explaining. His sharp intake of breath tells me he's seeing what I saw. Jesus, he mutters. Sarah Chen in 2015. Marcus Rodriguez in 2018. All of them. Set up to fail. My reflection stares back, haunted. It's his game. Build them up, break them down, then sweep in to save the company. And now Tyler's next. Derek's keyboard clicks in the background. But why would he do this to his own son? The bourbon burns going down. Because it's never been about Tyler. It's about control. Always has been. A knock at my door makes me freeze. Through the peephole, Maya stands in the hallway, perfectly composed despite the late hour. We need to talk, she says when I open the door. Her eyes flick to my phone. Alone. I end the call with Derek, but leave the line open, muted. Maya moves through my apartment like she owns it, settling onto my couch with practiced grace. Those files you received? She crosses her legs. They're just the beginning. You sent them. I've been watching Richard's pattern for years. She pulls out a tablet. Waiting for the right moment, the right ally. And you think that's me? Her smile is razor sharp. I think you're smart enough to see the bigger picture. This isn't just about your brother anymore. The tablet shows more documents. Board meeting minutes, private emails, financial transfers. A web of manipulation spanning decades. Richard's retiring, but he's not letting go, Maya continues. Tyler's just his latest puppet. Once he fails, Richard steps in as special advisor to clean up the mess. The board begs him to return, and the cycle continues. My hands clench. Why show me this? Because you're different. You actually understand the business. With the right evidence, the right strategy. She lets the implication hang. You want me to help you expose him. I want us to help each other. She stands, smoothing her skirt. Think about it, but don't take too long. Others are already moving against him. After she leaves, Derek's voice crackles through my phone. You know this is a trap, right? I stare at the documents Maya left behind. The question is, whose trap? Autumn. His tone carries warning. This is bigger than family drama now. People's careers, lives. I know. My voice sounds distant to my own ears. That's why I have to do something. Do what, exactly? The bourbon glass catches moonlight, casting shadows like prison bars across my floor. Beat them at their own game. I spend the rest of the night digging deeper, mapping connections, finding patterns. By dawn, my walls are covered in digital strings of evidence, all pointing to one inescapable truth. I'm not just fighting for my place anymore. I'm fighting for everyone Richard has ever destroyed. My phone buzzes. Tyler, asking for help with another presentation. Below that, a message from my mother about Sunday dinner. A family pretending everything's normal while Rome burns. Maya's right about one thing. This is bigger than Tyler now, but she's wrong if she thinks I'm playing by anyone's rules but my own. I send Derek a message. Get me everything you can on Maya's history with the company. Every project, every connection. Then I call Tyler. Hey, brother. About that presentation, I have some ideas I think Dad will love. Sometimes the only way to dismantle a game is to play all sides until the pieces collapse. Richard taught me that, even if he never meant to. The sun rises over the city, painting everything in shades of blood and gold. Time to see who's really pulling the strings, and who's about to get tangled in them. The Morrison account was supposed to be Tyler's first major test. Instead, it becomes my first real move. I sit in the back of the conference room, watching him flounder through another presentation and carefully plant the seeds of doubt. Interesting approach, I murmur to the client when Tyler steps out, though not quite what we discussed in the preliminary meetings. Mrs. Morrison's perfectly manicured nails tap against her tablet. You mean when you handled the account? Oh, I'm sure Tyler has his reasons for the changes. I pause, letting concern color my voice. Though, if you'd prefer to discuss the original strategy. By the time Tyler returns, Mrs. Morrison's smile has gained a predatory edge. The meeting ends with polite promises to review their options. Derek catches me in the hallway afterward. That was cold. That was business. I keep walking, heels clicking against marble. Tyler wanted to play CEO. Let him learn how it feels to lose a $10 million account. And the 30 people whose jobs depend on that account. I falter for half a step. They'll land on their feet. Besides, better a controlled crash now than... Autumn. Maya appears around the corner, smooth as silk. Richard wants to see you. My stomach drops, but I keep my face neutral. In Richard's office, sunlight streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the man who taught me everything about power, including how to lose it. The Morrison account, he begins without preamble. They're considering pulling out. So I heard. Tyler seems to think you might have influenced their decision. I meet his gaze steadily. Tyler needs to learn that actions have consequences. Indeed, Richard's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Speaking of consequences, the board is concerned about recent performance metrics. They're suggesting a restructuring of senior management. The threat hangs between us. I think of Maya's files, of all the others Richard has destroyed. Interesting timing. Just business. He turns to the window. Though I'd hate to see your career suffer from poor choices. Like choosing loyalty over competence. His shoulders stiffen. Careful, Autumn. Family or not. Family? I laugh, sharp and bitter. Is that what you call it when you set your own son up to fail? He turns back slowly. What exactly are you implying? You know exactly what I'm implying. The doctored reports, the systematic dismantling of support structures. Did you use the same playbook on Sarah Chen, Marcus Rodriguez? For a moment, something like respect flickers across his face. Then it's gone, replaced by calculated concern. You seem stressed. Perhaps you should take some time off. To think about my future? I stand. Don't worry, Richard. I'm thinking about all our futures. Outside his office, Maya waits with a knowing smile. Productive meeting? You could say that. I start walking. She falls into step beside me. Tell me, Maya, how long did you work with Sarah Chen before Richard destroyed her? Her stride hitches. I don't. Because I've been looking at the old org charts. Funny how you always seem to be adjacent to the carnage, but never caught in it. We all make choices to survive. Her voice hardens. The question is, what choice are you making now? Before I can answer, Tyler bursts from the elevator, face flushed. The Morrisons just called. They're pulling their entire portfolio. Maya's eyebrows rise. All 7 subsidiaries? They're saying something about loss of confidence in leadership. Tyler's accusations hit like bullets. What did you say to them? Nothing they hadn't already figured out. I turn away, but his hand catches my arm. You're trying to sabotage me. Tyler, Maya interrupts smoothly. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. His grip tightens. I want to know why my own sister. Because someone had to show you what real leadership costs. I wrench free. Congratulations, little brother. You just learned your first lesson. I leave him standing there, Maya already moving to damage control. In my office, Derek waits with fresh intel. The Morrisons aren't just pulling out, he says quietly. They're taking their business to Startup Media. My new shell company, created last week under layers of corporate veils. Phase 1 complete, I murmur, watching Tyler rush past my door, trailing destruction in his wake. Time for Phase 2. Autumn. Derek hesitates. Are you sure about this? Once you start, I'm sure about one thing. I pull up the next set of accounts targeted for restructuring. Richard taught us all about burning bridges. Now let's see how he likes watching his empire burn. The emergency board meeting feels like a funeral. 24 hours after the Morrison disaster, Silverstone stock has plummeted 18%. I sit at the far end of the conference table, watching Tyler sweat through his expensive suit while Richard maintains his granite facade. 3 major accounts lost in 2 weeks. Board Chairman Phillips reads from his tablet. Projected quarterly losses exceeding 30 million. Would anyone care to explain? Maya slides a document across the table. Our analysis suggests a systematic breakdown in client relations under the new leadership structure. Breakdown, Tyler's voice cracks. More like sabotage. Autumn's been... Careful, brother. I keep my tone mild. Accusations require evidence. Richard's eyes narrow as I pull out my own folder. Speaking of evidence, I continue, I have some interesting documents regarding company management practices over the past decade. The color drains from his face. He knows exactly what I'm holding. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, he suggests. Why? Afraid of what the board might learn about your leadership training methods? I start distributing copies. About Sarah Chen, Marcus Rodriguez, all the others you built up just to tear down. Murmurs ripple through the room as board members scan the papers. Phillips removes his glasses slowly. Richard, these allegations are a desperate attempt at misdirection, Maya interrupts. The real issue is the current crisis. The real issue, I stand, is that this company has been run like a puppet show, and I'm done playing with strings. I trigger the presentation screen, displaying years of manipulated reports, doctored performance reviews, and carefully orchestrated failures. Tyler stares at the evidence of his own orchestrated downfall, comprehension dawning in his eyes. Dad? His voice sounds young, broken. You set me up. Tyler, I was preparing you. For what? I cut in. To fail spectacularly enough that the board would beg you to return, just like every other time. The room erupts in chaos. Board members demand explanations. Maya tries to seize control of the narrative, but I'm not done. Oh, and about those lost accounts? I pull up one final document. They're not lost. They're with Startup Media, my new company. Richard's mask finally cracks. You learn from the best. I smile. About burning bridges, destroying lives, all of it. How does it feel, watching your legacy crumble? The victory tastes like ashes when I see Tyler's devastated face. This was supposed to be about justice, but now... Security will escort you out, Philip says quietly. All of you, pending a full investigation. In the lobby, Tyler catches my arm. Was any of it real? Did you ever actually care about helping me? Before I can answer, Maya appears. Autumn? A word? She leads me aside, her smile sharp as broken glass. Brilliant performance. Almost had me convinced. She hands me her phone, displaying emails I've never seen. But you missed something. My blood freezes. The emails show conversations between Richard and Maya spanning years. Planning my downfall, not Tyler's. I was the target all along. Did you really think Richard would let an outsider run his company? She laughs softly. Tyler was just the bait, and you played your part perfectly. The evidence will be dismissed as fabricated once the board sees these. Your reputation, destroyed. Startup Media, about to face multiple lawsuits. She pats my cheek. Richard taught you well, but he taught me better. Security approaches. Maya steps back, victorious. By the way, Sarah Chen works for me now. Funny how things come full circle. I walk out of Silverstone Media for the last time, my carefully constructed revenge plot shattering around me. Derek waits by my car. They're freezing our accounts, he says quietly. All of them. Maya's team moved fast. Of course they did. I was so focused on Richard's game, I never saw the bigger trap. My phone buzzes. My mother. The family lawyers will handle everything, she says when I answer. But Autumn... Don't come to Sunday dinner, not for a while. I watch Tyler leave the building, shoulders slumped, destroyed by the truth about both his father and his sister. Richard follows, already in damage control mode. Maya stands at the window above, queen of the castle I helped her claim. What now? Derek asks. I think of all the lives I've damaged in my quest for justice, of the legacy of destruction I've continued rather than ended. Now? My laugh sounds hollow even to me. Now we see if I learned anything from Richard besides how to burn it all down. 3 days after the board meeting, I find Sarah Chen waiting in my apartment. She sits at my kitchen counter, calm as if she belongs there, a familiar manila envelope between her hands. Maya said you'd figure it out eventually. She slides the envelope toward me. But I thought you deserved to know the whole truth. Inside, I find what Maya missed, evidence of her own manipulation. Years of careful orchestration, using both Richard and Tyler as pawns while she positioned herself for power. The same game Richard played, but with an extra layer of deception. Why show me this? Sarah's smile is tired. Because Maya forgot one thing about people she destroys. We tend to remember. My phone buzzes. Derek. You need to see this. Maya's calling an emergency press conference. She's going to... I know exactly what she's going to do. I grab my keys, and I know exactly who's going to stop her. The Silverstone media lobby buzzes with reporters. Maya stands at the podium, resplendent in victory, while Richard and Tyler sit behind her like well-trained dogs. My mother and grandmother watch from the wings, their perfect family tableau finally shattered. Today marks a new chapter, Maya begins, as we address recent allegations of corporate misconduct. Funny you should mention misconduct. My voice carries across the room. Heads turn, cameras swivel. I have some allegations of my own. Maya's smile doesn't waver. Security won't help you. Sarah Chen emerges from the crowd, followed by Marcus Rodriguez and others, all Maya's previous victims. Not with what we know. I approach the podium, each step measured. You were right about one thing, Maya. Richard taught me well, but he didn't teach me everything. The evidence appears on the screen behind her, not just Richard's manipulations or Tyler's setup, but Maya's entire scheme. Years of careful documentation, preserved by those she thought she'd destroyed. You see, I continue, while you were watching Richard teach me about power, you missed the most important lesson, how to recognize when you're being played. Maya's composure cracks. These documents are clearly fabricated, like the ones you planted about me. I turn to the board members present. Interesting timing on those emails, by the way. Almost like they were created after the fact. Richard stands slowly, recognition dawning in his eyes. You knew. All along, you knew what she was doing. I learned from the best, remember? My laugh holds no humor. About watching your enemies destroy themselves while you just help things along. Tyler joins us at the podium, his face hard. The Morrison account, you didn't just steal it, you protected it, from her. Maya moves with sudden desperation, but Sarah blocks her path. Around us, her carefully constructed house of cards collapses as former victims step forward with their own evidence. Congratulations, I tell her softly. You played everyone perfectly, except for one detail. You forgot to check who was really pulling the strings at Startup Media. Her eyes widen as she finally understands. Every client she thought I'd stolen, every account she'd helped me sabotage, all part of a larger plan to expose her own manipulation. The board has heard enough. Chairman Philip steps forward. Security will escort Ms. Maya to her office to collect her things. The authorities have some questions about certain financial irregularities. As Maya is led away, Richard approaches me. You sacrificed everything, your reputation, your position, your own family, just to expose her. No. I meet his gaze steadily. I sacrificed everything to break the cycle. Your cycle, her cycle, all of it. I turn to leave, but Tyler catches my arm. What happens now? Now? I look at our fractured family, at the company built on manipulation and fear. Now we learn how to build something new, something better, if you're interested. Behind us, reporters clamor for statements while Maya's empire crumbles. But I'm already walking away, Sarah and the others falling in step beside me. Sometimes victory isn't about who's left standing. It's about who's brave enough to walk away and start again. Derek waits by the door, grinning. Ready for phase 3? I think of all the lessons Richard taught me about power, all the ones Maya taught me about deception, and all the ones I had to learn myself about redemption. Phase 3, I agree. Let's build something worth saving this time. The new office of Phoenix Media overlooks the city from a different angle than Silverstone's tower. Smaller, but somehow it feels more real. Sarah Chen's team just landed their third major account, while Marcus Rodriguez's creative division continues exceeding expectations. Board meeting in 10, Derek announces, dropping a stack of reports on my desk. Tyler's waiting in the conference room. I find my brother studying our mission statement on the wall, building success through integrity. His suit is less expensive now, but he stands straighter. The Anderson portfolio looks promising, he says without turning, though the numbers need work. That's why I asked you to consult. I move beside him. You've learned a lot about what not to do, learned from the best. His smile holds a hint of old pain, but something else too. Understanding, maybe. Speaking of learning, did you see this? He hands me a tablet displaying Richard's resignation letter from Silverstone's board. The company's being restructured under new leadership. Someone named Claire Foster, a long-time middle manager I barely remember. Claire? I frown. Why her? Check her personnel file, the one Richard kept in his private records. The document makes my hands shake. Years of notes, careful observations, quiet mentoring. Richard had been grooming Claire all along, while the rest of us fought over shadows. He played us all, Tyler says quietly. But maybe he taught us something too, about what really matters in building something lasting. The conference room fills with my new team, former victims of corporate games turned architects of something better. Sarah Chen's financial models revolutionized our approach. Marcus Rodriguez's creative strategies attract clients tired of old power plays. Quarterly projections are up, Sarah begins, but more importantly, employee satisfaction scores. A familiar figure in the doorway cuts her off. My mother stands there, looking smaller than I remember. I won't stay, she says quickly. I just wanted you to have these. She places a box on the table. Old photos, newspaper clippings, documentation of every achievement Richard never acknowledged. At the bottom, a handwritten note. I should have seen you sooner. Ah. Evelyn still won't speak to me, my mother continues, but I'm learning to speak for myself. After she leaves, Tyler helps me sort through the box. We find pictures of ourselves as children, before power and position poisoned everything, before we learned the wrong lessons about success. You know, Tyler muses, I always thought Dad's greatest legacy would be Silverstone. But looking at this, he gestures around the office, at the people working together without fear or manipulation. Maybe his real legacy is what we learned not to be. The board meeting proceeds without power plays or hidden agendas. We discuss challenges openly, admit mistakes honestly, celebrate successes genuinely. It's harder this way, slower, but it feels clean. Later, I find one last photo in the box. Richard at my college graduation, actually smiling. On the back, in Claire Foster's handwriting, he saw the potential for something better in all of you. Derek appears with fresh coffee and a knowing look. So, ready to tell the team about the merger offer? I think about Silverstone's board wanting to combine forces, about Claire Foster's quiet revolution there, about second chances and better ways forward. Not yet, I decide. Some foundations need time to settle. Through the window, I can see both buildings now, Silverstone's imposing tower and our more modest office. Different shadows, different lessons. Tyler's already studying the merger proposals, but this time with questions about culture and values, not just power and profit. The photo of Richard goes into my desk drawer, not hidden, just waiting, like the possibility of reconciliation, of understanding that some victories don't look like what we expected. Sarah pokes her head in. New client meeting in 5. They're interested in our innovative corporate culture. I smile, thinking of all the ways we learned to build something new from the ruins of the old. Tell them we're ready, Because that's the thing about shadows. They only have power when you let them define your light. And we're done living in anyone's shadow but our own.
Heat exhaustion. Just sleep it off. My husband coldly declared to me, 9 months pregnant, as he forbade me from using the air conditioner in the scorching summer heat. I collapsed in our 105 degrees Fahrenheit room, unable to even stand up or drink water, my consciousness fading away. Then he left for a vacation. 3 days later, when my husband returned from his enjoyable trip, he found our home in a miserable state, filled with the stench of decay. But that was just the beginning of the hell he was about to experience. I married Niall, my husband 5 years my senior, when I was 28. About a year later, I discovered I was pregnant, something we'd been hoping for. Though his mother lived nearby, we didn't interact much, but she was delighted to hear about her first grandchild. To everyone else, we seemed like the perfect couple. But even in our happy life, I had a worry. My husband was incredibly stingy. When we were dating, Niall seemed kind and understanding. I fell in love with that man and decided to marry him, but once we started living together, his personality completely changed. Casey, the electric bill is $5 higher this month. And the grocery and household expenses are up from last month too. You're being too extravagant. What? That's just a normal fluctuation, isn't it? Everything's getting more expensive lately, we can't help it. Then use your head and find ways to economize. You're a housewife, aren't you? You're useless. Every month, my husband would meticulously check our expenses, and if he felt anything was even slightly higher, he'd invariably berate me. If I wanted something, I couldn't just buy it without Niall scolding me, so I had to check with him first. And most of the time, he'd dismiss it, saying I didn't need such things. I was starting to feel suffocated in this marriage, feeling like I was under constant surveillance. When I found out I was pregnant, I felt joy but also a twinge of anxiety. Still, I thought surely he'd change once the baby was born. I used to work full-time at a large corporation. But as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I started experiencing severe morning sickness. The doctor diagnosed it as hyperemesis gravidarum and advised me to take a leave of absence until my condition improved. That night, I told my husband what the obstetrician had said. Niall frowned. What? Absolutely not. But I can't work in this condition with all the nausea. If you take leave, that means no salary, right? That's a problem. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was more worried about the salary than my health. But my body was screaming for rest, so I had to convince Niall somehow. The morning sickness should only last another month or two, and HR said I could get sickness benefits, so we'll manage. No, it'll still be less than if you worked normally. No way. He refused to budge and shut himself in the bedroom before the conversation was even over. After much deliberation, I decided to ask my workplace for permission to work from home. For the next 2 months, until my condition stabilized, I struggled through work at home, fighting waves of nausea every day. My husband didn't say anything about this since my salary remained the same. It felt so unfair. There was a reason I felt this way. While my husband was extremely critical of our living expenses and my purchases, he was quite extravagant when it came to his own spending. He'd buy whatever he wanted on a whim, and his clothes were all brand name items. My dissatisfaction with my husband, who loosened the purse strings only for himself, kept growing. But whenever I pointed this out, he'd fly into a rage, and his bad mood would last for days, so I gradually stopped saying anything. As summer arrived, I finally entered my 9th month of pregnancy. I had started my maternity leave a little earlier and was enjoying peaceful days at home, preparing for the baby's arrival while doing housework. However, my husband seemed displeased with this situation. "The electric bill has gone up since you've been home." While he hadn't said anything when I was working from home and receiving my full salary, my maternity leave income was about 80% of my usual pay. This seemed to irk him. "Well, that can't be helped. It's hot, so we need the air conditioner this time of year." "No, we managed without the AC during the day before. Don't use it until I get home." "What? That's impossible in the middle of summer." I naturally objected, but he wouldn't budge. From that day on, I had to endure the summer heat without air conditioning. I considered secretly using the AC when my husband wasn't home, but he'd check the electric bill at the end of the month and find out, so that wasn't an option. My body temperature was already higher than usual due to being 9 months pregnant. After about a week, I collapsed with symptoms of heat exhaustion, nausea and dizziness. When my husband came home, I explained the situation. "Just sleep it off. That's impossible in this hot room. I'm worried about the baby too. Can you take me to the hospital tomorrow? I'm going on a 3-day company trip from tomorrow." So, no. I was shocked by my husband's casual words. I hadn't heard anything about a trip, and with my due date so close, he was going to be away for 3 days. Ignoring my shock, Niall cheerfully packed his bags. The next day, before leaving, he warned me, "Don't turn on the AC until I get back. The electric bill is too high. And don't you dare go to the hospital. It'll get better on its own." To prevent me from going to the hospital, he took my smartphone and placed it out of my reach before leaving. After Niall left, my condition only worsened. Eventually, I couldn't even get up or drink water. This isn't just dangerous for me, but for the baby too. I lay there, helpless and despairing in a room that had reached 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Suddenly, I noticed the intercom was ringing. It seemed I had lost consciousness, and it was already dark outside. I was too weak to get up and answer the door. But the intercom kept ringing persistently. Who could it be? As I pondered hazily, I heard a familiar voice calling my name from outside the door. With a start, I gathered my last ounces of strength and crawled to the entrance, using that voice as my guide. Just as I managed to unlock the door, I completely lost consciousness. 3 days later, my husband returned home. As soon as he opened the living room door, he covered his mouth and nose. He was retching at the terrible smell. "What's this smell of decay? And all these flies? Oh no." Niall frantically searched the room, seemingly looking for something. He returned to the living room and stared intently at the sofa and blanket I usually use when lying down. He seemed afraid to touch it. Then, as if struck by an idea, he started making a phone call. A ringtone sounded from high up in the living room. It was probably my phone he was calling. But the phone he had taken from me before leaving was still there. My husband looked around, found my smartphone, and picked it up. So, it must be. Once again, he tried to reach for the blanket on the sofa. I'm not there. Ah. Niall was so startled by my voice coming from somewhere that he lost his balance and fell onto the sofa. Then he started apologizing. I'm sorry. Did you think I was decomposing under that blanket? Huh. He looked around, then suddenly yanked off the blanket. There were just some cushions piled up underneath. Hey, where are you? My husband's voice was angry now, demanding to know where my voice was coming from. At this point, I wasn't actually in the house. I was watching what was happening inside through a baby monitor camera my colleagues had given me before my maternity leave began. I'm here. Can you hear my voice coming from that small thing next to the TV? Huh? Where are you talking from? He asked irritably. When I told him where I was, Niall rushed out of the living room. Within 30 minutes, my husband arrived where I was. Why did you go to the hospital without my permission? You disobeyed me. He shouted as soon as he saw me. I was lying in bed with an 4 drip, but my husband didn't even offer a word of comfort at the sight. Yes, this was a hospital room. A room with proper air conditioning. I'll explain later how I ended up here, but my husband started saying things like this. This is a private room, isn't it? Do you have any idea how much this costs? I didn't answer, just stared at Niall. And what's with the smell in that room? It stinks, and there are flies everywhere. We can't live there like that. Do you know how much house cleaning will cost? As my husband went on and on about money, I let out a heavy sigh. Was it really that bad? That was the leftover food you didn't clean up 3 days ago. Scrambled eggs, blueberry yogurt, what else was it? Of course it would rot if left in a room without air conditioning. You see, on that day, I was too sick to clean up Niall's leftovers. And then I was hospitalized, so everything was left on the table. Weren't you worried about me and the baby, telling us to sleep in a room hot enough to rot food? If you had cleaned up properly, there wouldn't have been a problem. You're always exaggerating things, first with morning sickness, now with the pregnancy. My husband sneered at me, saying outrageous things. I could have been the one rotting there. It was that dangerous. I was utterly disappointed in Niall. But he showed no sign of remorse. Even if you don't care about me, I can't imagine raising a child with someone who doesn't worry about their baby. What are you talking about? Are you planning to become a single mother? You can't raise a child alone. Besides, being a single parent means living in poverty. Don't you think that's pitiful for the child? Niall said with a smirk, looking down on me. How far is this man going to belittle me? Suppressing the urge to slap him, my heart was burning with a desire for revenge. Suddenly, the door to the hospital room opened, and someone walked in. My husband was surprised to see this person, his eyes widening. "Mom! Why are you here?" I called her. "Is that a problem? Besides, she's the one who saved my life. You see, it was my mother-in-law who had rescued me from the house and got me admitted to this hospital that day. But I thought you didn't like Mom." "Huh? You're the one who's been uncomfortable with your mother and avoiding her all this time, right? I've been exchanging contact information with her and keeping in touch occasionally." "I never heard about that. Did I need to tell you?" It seems Niall found his strict and nagging mother bothersome, but that was just her motherly love. However, unable to see that, my husband had unilaterally distanced himself from her. As for me, ever since I reported my pregnancy, I had made it a daily routine to reply to the morning emails from my mother-in-law checking on my condition. Of course, I found it difficult to consult her about my troubles with Niall's excessive frugality, but I was encouraged by her kind messages that arrived every day. On the day my husband left for his trip and took away my smartphone, I couldn't reply to my mother-in-law's email. The sudden break in our daily habit must have worried her. Concerned, she came to check on me just in case, and that's how I was discovered and rescued. It was her who had been persistently ringing the doorbell and calling out to me in my fading consciousness. Casey was in a life-threatening situation if she had stayed at home. That's an exaggeration. You almost lost your wife and child, and you're still saying such nonsense. My mother-in-law, who had heard everything from the hallway, scolded Niall. My husband backed away, intimidated by his mother's intensity. "Don't interfere in our marriage." Even so, my husband retorted while trying to forcibly grab my arm and get me out of the bed, intending to discharge me and leave this place quickly. I shook off his hand. "I'm divorcing you. As a father's responsibility, you'll pay child support properly." "Well, I might agree to a divorce, but I won't pay any money," my husband shouted, his face red with anger, spittle flying. From there, neither of us would back down, and the conversation reached an impasse. That's when my mother-in-law pulled out a piece of paper. "It's not that you won't pay, it's that you can't pay, right?" What my mother-in-law thrust at my husband was a debt collection notice. "How did you get that?" Seeing it, my husband was visibly shaken, cold sweat breaking out on his face. Actually, my mother-in-law had found that letter in the mailbox when she rescued me. I was shocked to see this. "So that's why you were so keen on saving money and wouldn't let me take time off work. You were planning to use my income to repay your debts. How I use the family's money is my business." It seemed she had hit the nail on the head. He stumbled over his words for a moment but then spat them out as if in defiance. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and a nurse came in to announce it was feeding time. My husband tilted his head in confusion. When I was brought to the hospital, I was in a critical condition. Judging that both mother and child wouldn't survive otherwise, they had performed an emergency C-section. It was all thanks to my mother-in-law finding me at that crucial moment and calling an ambulance. I had been covering my stomach with a blanket on the bed since Niall arrived, so he hadn't noticed that I had given birth. Pay off your own debts with your own efforts. Because of your selfishness, we were put in mortal danger. You don't deserve to be a father. Sensing my firm resolve for divorce from my expression, my husband suddenly became flustered. I was wrong. I'll apologize, so let's reconsider the divorce. It's too late. I've been patient for so long, but this incident has completely drained my love for you. Please, don't abandon me. Mom, say something to her. Niall, now in tears, turned to his mother for help. I'm on Casey's side. I don't care about you anymore. No. Mom, Casey, please don't abandon me. A father like you is worse than no father at all. I'll raise the child on my own. When I firmly rejected and pushed away my husband, he was dragged out of the hospital room by his mother. After that, Niall reluctantly signed the divorce papers. I hired a lawyer and made sure to establish a proper agreement for child support payments, securing a promise of $700 per month until the child turns 18. Without my income that he had been counting on, my ex-husband quickly ran into trouble repaying his debts and was evicted from our apartment. Now, it seems he's sleeping in the park and working day and night, trapped in a cycle of debt. As for me, I'm managing quite well with my own income and the child support, enjoying a life with more freedom and less stress than before. My mother-in-law still visits every 2 weeks as the child's grandmother, maintaining our relationship. I hope to continue watching my child grow alongside her. Why? How could this happen? For days after my beloved daughter left for her honeymoon, I was suddenly informed that she had died in an accident. Just when she had found a good person and was about to start a happy life. During the funeral, her husband was also crying, saying he couldn't regret it enough. However, I felt something odd about one of his statements. Something was off. Could it be murder? With an uneasy feeling in my chest, I began investigating the incident that took my daughter's life, not knowing that the truth would plunge me into despair. I had raised my daughter Taylor alone since losing my husband to an accident when I was young. She was my pride and joy, honest, straightforward, and devoted to her parents. Since I had been a single parent and caused her some hardships, I was truly delighted when she introduced me to a man. Her marriage partner, Harry, seemed like a serious person. His parents had already passed away, and he had no siblings, claiming to be completely alone in the world. At first, I had the impression that he was a fine young man with a refreshing appearance and seemingly flawless character. What? You're not having a wedding ceremony? My daughter looked very displeased when she told me this. Harry said he doesn't like flashy or conspicuous things, and it's a waste of money to just register the marriage. But didn't you say you wanted to wear a wedding dress? My daughter is a girl after all, so she must have wanted to wear that once-in-a-lifetime attire. However, at this point, a disagreement with Harry had emerged. He says he wants to splurge on the honeymoon with the money we save. He really wants to go on an overseas trip. I see. Indeed, if they wanted to have a decent-sized wedding ceremony and enjoy an overseas trip, it would be quite expensive. However, I thought it was inappropriate not to listen to any of my daughter's wishes. They could have a domestic trip, or if they insisted on going abroad, they could look for cheaper options. Surely Harry could compromise somewhere. I felt uneasy, thinking that Taylor was being taken lightly, but I didn't want their relationship to sour at this point. So, I decided to invite them both to my home. Hey, is it okay if I try to persuade Harry? After getting my daughter's permission, I arranged to speak directly with Harry. Harry, I want you to listen to this as my selfish desire to see my daughter in her wedding attire. Couldn't you at least have a wedding ceremony just for the photos? But I really want to make the honeymoon special, you know. For him, who has no parents, it might not sit well to have me taking Taylor's side as a parent figure. However, it's said that dissatisfaction with marriage and childbirth can last a lifetime. Besides, it shouldn't be wrong to bring in a little parental desire to fulfill my daughter's wish. I spoke as carefully and amicably as possible, trying not to offend him. We'll include Taylor's favorite activity, diving, in the plan. But it's quite popular, so it's quite expensive. Is that so? That sounds fun. In that case, I'll pay for all the wedding photo costs. Consider it a wedding gift. How's that? Really? That's great. Thank you so much. I'm happy that I'll get to see Taylor looking beautiful too. The moment I said I'd cover the costs, his expression brightened, and I couldn't help but give a wry smile. Is he unexpectedly stingy? Although I felt a bit uneasy about the future, at least this way, we could have a photo wedding. My daughter got to wear about 3 dresses she liked. Once we started, Harry seemed to get into it too, not complaining about changing outfits or moving to different locations. In the end, it seemed to become a good memory for both of them, so I was glad I had persuaded them. The day after taking lots of great photos and having a small dinner party, my daughter and her husband left for their honeymoon in Australia. I'll bring back lots of souvenirs. That was the last time I heard my daughter's voice. What? What did you say? I suddenly received a call from someone claiming to be the local police, telling me that my daughter had died. This happened just 4 days after Taylor and Harry had left. They said my daughter had drowned while diving. Apparently, the day before they were to go into the sea, my daughter had sprained her ankle while sightseeing in another location. Despite this, she insisted on going into the water because she had been looking forward to it so much. The person on the phone seemed to have changed from the police to Harry at some point, but honestly, I don't remember much about that moment. When I came to my senses, only Harry had returned, my daughter's remains had been brought to the funeral home, and I was holding Taylor's memorial portrait. And I was receiving condolences from the funeral attendees. It was then that I felt like I could finally face what was happening in front of me. Perhaps because I was like this, or maybe because he was feeling the same way, Harry hardly spoke to me until the funeral. Thank you all for attending my wife's funeral today. Harry was addressing the microphone, but his voice was flat, almost mechanical. However, as he began to describe the circumstances of my daughter's death, Harry's voice started to tremble. Finally, he began to sob, his words becoming fragmented. No one would expect things to turn out like this when they were about to start a happy life together. Of course he'd react that way. Huh? Wait a minute. Harry's speech was a typical eulogy if you just let it wash over you. But I noticed something odd about it. During breaks in the funeral, I had the chance to talk with my daughter's friends who had attended, and I found something else puzzling there too. Her friends were all saying things like, "I didn't know Taylor had gotten married," and "This is the first time I've seen Taylor's husband." Surprisingly, Taylor and Harry hadn't told anyone about their marriage registration, and they didn't have a single friend in common. Were they planning to announce it after they got the photos? But is it normal for no one to know Harry? Although there were quite a few attendees at the funeral, it struck me as odd that none of Harry's acquaintances were among them, but I thought the only way to resolve these nagging doubts was to talk to Harry directly. However, the conversation took a dramatic turn shortly after this. Due to the testimony of a certain person attending this funeral. It was 2 weeks later that I contacted Harry. By this time, he must have been busy dealing with Taylor's belongings and insurance paperwork. I still have some of Taylor's insurance documents at my house. I'm sorry to trouble you, but could you come pick them up? When I said this, Harry came right over. "Hello, Mother. Where are the documents?" As Harry said this, a large fist connected with his face. Harry's body seemed to float in the air for a moment before being slammed to the floor with the same momentum. Harry could only look confused as he held his struck face. No wonder, my niece and Harry's brother Anthony had been waiting in the guest room. "I've finally found you, you stupid little brother. How dare you deceive my aunt and cousin?" So this is what it was. I was right to trust my instinct at that time. What? What's going on? Why is my brother here? During the funeral, I had sensed something odd about Harry's eulogy. Now, the source of that oddity became clear. That day, Harry had tearfully told the attendees, "My wife attempted to climb Ayers Rock the day before diving. He said she had lost her footing and sprained her ankle, which is why she couldn't swim well and drowned." But that story doesn't make sense. Why are you bringing this up now? More importantly, why is my brother here? You lied to me. My daughter would never climb Ayers Rock. I glared at Harry, who still couldn't get up from the floor. My daughter hates heights. Ever since she slipped and fell off a cliff during a mountain climb long ago, suffering a major injury. Taylor was a girl who hesitated even to step out onto the balcony of our second-floor home. She was so terrified of falling from high places. There's no way such a Taylor would willingly climb an unstable rock mountain. Taylor listened to my selfish request. I begged her, saying that climbing would soon be prohibited, and I really wanted to go before that happened. She agreed, but because of that, Harry's voice trailed off. His face seemed to suggest he felt responsible, but I wasn't about to be fooled by such an act. Even if that were true, a normal husband would have stopped her from diving if she had sprained her ankle. Besides, Taylor had diving as a hobby, so she would have understood the dangers of diving when in poor condition. She wasn't foolish enough to take such a risk just because she was looking forward to it. Besides, I don't trust you anymore. You, whose background I don't even know. No, that's... As Harry mumbled, still sprawled on the floor, Anthony grabbed him by the neck and forced him into a formal sitting position. Probably due to the earlier punch to the face, Harry was shaking and crying. Anthony was a tall, strong man. He's apparently a martial arts instructor, so it's no wonder Harry would want to cry if such a person angrily punched him. But I felt no sympathy for Harry. You still haven't learned your lesson and you're still doing this kind of thing. Since when did you start going by the name Harry? Your name is Daniel, isn't it? Oh, so that's your real name. Who exactly are you? Why did you use a false name to deceive me and my daughter? Explain it yourself. Daniel, formerly known as Harry, averted his eyes from me and refused to answer. Everything about his identity had been a lie. His occupation, his claim of having no relatives, it was all made up. In reality, his parents are still alive, and he even has 2 older brothers. If you won't say it, shall I? I already know everything you've been doing. You've been repeating marriage fraud all over the country, haven't you? I heard you were even in prison once. According to Anthony, after Daniel had finished his prison term and was released, he had been living quietly at home for a while under the watchful eye of his parents and siblings. However, one day when the family members took their eyes off him for a moment, he suddenly disappeared. You really never know. To think such a terrible person was living so close by without me noticing anything. But thanks to my niece, we were able to find out. It was my niece's testimony that she thought she saw this person in a photo her senior showed her, that led to the discovery of his true identity. My niece had gone to a university away from her hometown and found a job in that area after graduation. Your brother was a senior member of the club I was in. I thought I'd seen you somewhere before, and it was in a family photo that my senior had shown me once. When Harry heard this, he was speechless with his eyes wide open. He must never have imagined that my relative and his relative would be connected in such a place. I thought it might be a coincidence because the names were completely different, but I never imagined he'd be such a dangerous person. I truly don't know how to apologize enough. Anthony bowed his head to us, seemingly apologetic from the bottom of his heart. This guy has been cheating people out of money and putting them down since he was a kid. I thought he might have reflected a bit after going to prison, but to think he would do such a thing to someone's daughter. Wait. Taylor's death was an accident. I didn't do anything. Harry suddenly interjected, seemingly panicked. What? You're speaking as if my daughter was killed by someone. When I pointed this out, he made an expression that seemed to say, "Oh no." Perhaps the shock of being hit made it easier for him to slip up. Of course, I had it properly investigated. My niece and I had spoken with the local police and tour guides. There, we uncovered the truth about what happened to my daughter. My daughter had not injured her foot at all, and the cause of her drowning was an equipment malfunction that led to an air leak in the tank. Apparently, after the instructor's inspection, the valve had loosened for some reason, causing air to leak out and resulting in oxygen deprivation. The facility's cameras clearly captured the moment you touched my daughter's tank just before she dived. Cameras? I never heard anything about. And with special reagents, fingerprints can be collected even after being submerged in seawater. When I emphasized that we had secured the evidence, Harry started crying again. I had trouble with a woman at work and lost trust in women. He suddenly started talking about himself. Did he think this would change how I see him? But I didn't intend to harm Taylor. I just thought about getting some compensation or sickness benefits if she got a little injured. So you were trying to skim off some money. You really are scum from birth. Anthony sighed and added, and stop that disgusting fake crying. Besides, you're the one who caused the trouble, aren't you? You took a high-handed attitude towards female employees, forced them to quit, and that became a problem, leading to you being kicked out. I had already heard from Anthony that Harry had caused problems at his company in the past and been fired. He had been living off money he had scammed from people. You've always been like that. A liar, sneaky, never living an honest life. Shut up with your nagging. What's with you people? You've been ganging up on me this whole time. Perhaps recognizing that he was surrounded by enemies, Harry stopped crying and started to lose his temper. I'm different from my dad and brothers who are such boring people. I'm a chosen one. Working hard and getting all sweaty doesn't suit me. His absurd claims made me, Anthony, and my niece all take a step back. What's wrong with wanting to make money easily? Is that all you have to say? Not wanting to hear any more of his outrageous logic, I glared at him angrily. I'm still her husband. No divorce, no end to the marital relationship. The insurance money and survivor's pension are all mine. It's your daughter's fault for being deceived. With an evil grin, he truly looked like a villain. Insurance money, huh? I've already taken care of all that. Taylor didn't change any of her life insurance details from before the marriage. Also, since you don't have any children, you're not eligible for the survivor's pension. When I calmly informed him of this, he was at a loss for words again. Oh, didn't I mention? I work for an insurance company. Taylor came to consult with me about reviewing her insurance before going on the trip. After going through the process of changing the insurance beneficiary and reviewing the coverage, I told them I would take care of the rest and sent the two off on their trip. Then, just as I was about to process everything, I received a call from the local police, and it was still untouched. Were you in such a hurry for money? But if you were after the insurance money, shouldn't you have checked who the beneficiary was before taking action? I didn't want to know what was going through the mind of the person who took my daughter's life, but even from an outsider's perspective, it seemed like an incredibly shallow and sloppy approach. The insurance money has been properly deposited into my account. Damn it! It's your fault for not processing it quickly. Give me the money. It's mine. As Harry lunged at me saying this, Anthony restrained him. However, at this moment, my heart reached its limit. My body moved on its own, and I grabbed a bag containing my bank book, credit cards, and other items, then forcefully slammed it into Harry's face. Ouch! Of course it hurts when another impact is added to an already beaten face. But my daughter's pain and suffering were nothing like this. If you want it so badly, I'll give it to you. I said this with surprising calmness. I couldn't confirm it myself, but I think my expression must have been like a no mask. I don't need the insurance money or anything else. So give it back. I slowly approached Harry, speaking each word deliberately. Give me back my daughter. I could hear Harry quietly swallowing hard. I've recorded all your confessions, and I've called the police. You're going back behind bars. Damn it. This pisses me off. Remember this. I won't let this slide. When I get out, I'll do it again. I'll send you to the same place as your daughter. Anthony firmly held on to Harry, who was screaming and yelling. That's scary. But you should remember this too. It seems like this is the first time you've taken someone's life, but this time it'll be national news. Your actions will become known to all your past victims and their families. Outside the house, I could already see the flashing lights of police cars. I will never forget you. I'll always remember. And all the people you've deceived, driven to despair, and made suffer are all glaring at you. Huh? What's that supposed to mean? For me, it's enough if you receive legal punishment. But even if that's enough for me, what about others? Do you have any idea how many people hold grudges against you? Even after saying this much, it didn't seem to sink in for him. Not everyone seeks revenge through proper methods, you know. Whatever punishment anyone gives you, you'd better accept it without complaint. My niece showed the arriving police officers into the house. Your name, face, crimes, and punishment will all be made public. I wonder who will be waiting for you on the day of your release, and what they'll have prepared. I could see the blood drain from Harry's face as he looked at me. It seems he finally understood what I was saying. Perhaps he was counting his sins. Anthony held on to Harry's arm until the very end. And Harry showed no signs of trying to escape, allowing himself to be dragged away by the police. Maybe he had lost the will to resist due to fear of what would happen to him from now on. Thus, Harry, or rather Daniel, was arrested, and his face and real name were made public in national news, bringing his misdeeds to light. With one crime piled upon another, it seems he won't be able to come out from behind bars for at least 10 years. Even if he could get out, what awaits him is a massive amount of damage claims and a lonely life. It seems his habit of trying to manipulate people with tears and lies hasn't improved even in prison, and he's spending his days without being trusted by anyone. To this day, my daughter's friends still visit my house regularly. Through these connections, I've made new friends too, and thanks to their presence, I'm inspired to live strongly for my daughter's sake as well.
The glass and steel expanse of Quantum Systems headquarters gleamed in the San Francisco sunlight as I was escorted to the exit, security guards flanking me like pallbearers at a funeral. Employees peered over monitors as I passed, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and fear. Being marched out was rare at Quantum. The company preferred quieter departures, carefully managed resignations with generous severance packages and ironclad NDAs. My crime didn't merit such gentle handling. Your personal effects will be shipped to your residence, the head of security informed me, his voice professionally neutral as we reached the lobby. Your company devices have been remotely wiped. Of course they have, I replied, handing over my employee badge. Though you might want to tell Brandon that a remote wipe doesn't overwrite everything. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, just enough to tell me my parting shot had landed. My name is Maya Krishnan, and until 30 minutes ago, I was the lead security architect at Quantum Systems, one of the world's most powerful tech companies. Our consumer products were in billions of homes across the globe. Our business software ran Fortune 500 companies, and our operating systems powered everything from smartphones to smart cities. What most people didn't know, what I hadn't known until 4 months ago, was that Quantum also provided specialized surveillance software to governments with troubling human rights records, helping them monitor their citizens with unprecedented precision. Project Oracle, they called it, a system that could predict dissident behavior by analyzing communication patterns, identifying potential regime critics before they even became active. A digital crystal ball that was currently helping 12 authoritarian regimes silence opposition with terrifying efficiency. The Lyft driver who picked me up outside Quantum's campus kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "Rough day?" he finally asked. I looked out at the passing scenery, the manicured tech campuses of Silicon Valley, monuments to innovation that concealed darker purposes behind gleaming facades. "Just transitioning," I replied, checking my secure phone. Messages were already flooding in from journalists responding to the files I'd sent last night. Thousands of pages of internal documents, code samples, and deployment records showing exactly how Project Oracle worked and where it was being used. Rebecca Winters from the Washington Post, confirming receipt of all files. "This is explosive. Call me ASAP." Carlos Mendez from The Guardian, "Need to verify your identity before we proceed. Can you meet?" 25 other messages just like them. By tomorrow morning, Project Oracle would be front-page news worldwide. As the car pulled up to my apartment building, I noticed the black SUV parked across the street, 2 men inside, not bothering to be civil about their surveillance. Quantum security team, no doubt, monitoring my movements. They wouldn't risk confronting me directly, not when they didn't yet know what evidence I had or who I'd shared it with. Inside my apartment, I methodically checked for signs of entry. A hair placed on the doorframe still there. The almost invisible piece of clear tape on the drawer containing my passport undisturbed. Paranoid, perhaps, but I'd spent my career thinking about digital security. The physical kind wasn't so different. My laptop, my personal one, not the company device, was where I'd left it, secured with encryption that would take even Quantum's best engineers years to crack. I didn't power it on. Instead, I called Rebecca Winters from a secure line. "Maya, are you safe?" she asked immediately. "For now," I confirmed. "They fired me this morning, as expected." "We're planning to publish tomorrow at 6 a.m. Eastern," she explained. "The Guardian, Le Monde, and Der Spiegel will run simultaneously. Are you prepared for what comes next?" What comes next? Such a simple phrase for the complete upheaval of my life. "As much as anyone can be," I replied. "Have you verified the Iranian documents?" "Yes," she said grimly. 3 dissidents mentioned in the files have been arrested in the past month. 2 are still missing. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of those lives. When I first discovered Project Oracle while conducting a routine security audit, I tried to believe it was a misunderstanding. That a company founded on the principle of technology for humanity couldn't possibly be helping governments hunt down citizens whose only crime was criticizing their leaders. I'd followed protocol, reporting my concerns to my direct supervisor, Brandon Chen, Executive VP of Security Solutions. He'd seemed appropriately disturbed, promising to investigate and take my findings to CEO Garrett Wilson. 2 days later, I was removed from the security audit and assigned to an unrelated project. A week after that, I received a performance improvement plan citing communication issues and failure to align with company objectives. That's when I knew this wasn't a rogue operation. This was company policy. "The lawyers want to know if you signed an NDA," Rebecca continued, bringing me back to the present. Of course I did. Everyone at Quantum does. And you understand that they'll use that against you? That they'll say you're violating confidentiality agreements, maybe even national security protocols. I thought about Amir Javadi, an Iranian student whose name appeared in Oracle's files as a potential disruptive influence based on his text messages criticizing the government. Now missing. I thought about Liu Wei, a Chinese lawyer flagged by Oracle for defending religious minorities, currently serving a 10-year sentence for subversion of state power. Let them try, I said. After hanging up, I packed efficiently, clothes for a week, passport, extra cash, the burner phones I purchased over the past month. My go bag, prepared weeks ago when I first decided to become a whistleblower. As darkness fell, I slipped out through the building service exit, avoiding the watchful SUV. A pre-arranged taxi took me to a nondescript hotel registered under a name that couldn't be traced to me. Tomorrow, when the story broke, I would be unreachable, watching the fallout from a secure location. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Last chance, Maya Gito willing to talk. Generous terms. Garrett Wilson, reaching out directly. The CEO of Quantum Systems, whose net worth exceeded $50 billion, was worried enough to make a personal overture. I didn't respond. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Some compromises leave permanent stains. Instead, I powered down my phone, removed the battery, and settled in to wait for morning. The explosion came precisely at 6:00 a.m. Eastern, 3:00 a.m. Pacific. Exposed, TCE giant QANTUM C steams BUILT CURVILL Hain C204 authoritarian regimes, screamed the Washington Post headline. Similar headlines appeared simultaneously across global news outlets. By 5:00 a.m., #quantum surveillance was trending worldwide. By 7:00 a.m., Quantum stock had dropped 17% in pre-market trading. By 9:00 a.m., the company had issued a carefully worded statement. Quantum Systems categorically denies providing specialized surveillance technology to foreign governments. The documents in question have been taken out of context by a disgruntled former employee. I watched it all unfold on the hotel television, feeling strangely detached, as if observing someone else's story. My phone, newly activated with a fresh SIM card, buzzed constantly with messages from journalists seeking additional comments. At 11:42 a.m., my sister Priya called from New York. "Oh my God, Maya," she said when I answered. "It's you, isn't it? The unnamed senior security architect in the Post article. How did you know?" "Because you've been weird and evasive for months, and because I know my sister. Are you safe? Do you need help?" I hesitated. Involving family meant putting them at risk too. "I'm okay, but it's better if you don't have details right now. They're saying terrible things about you on the news," she warned. "Quantum's PR team is in full damage control. They're calling you unstable, said you were fired for erratic behavior." "Standard whistleblower playbook," I replied, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "Discredit the source when you can't dispute the facts." "The Quantum app on my phone, should I delete it?" "Yes," I said immediately, "and tell everyone you know to do the same." By evening, the story had evolved. Technical experts had reviewed the code samples I provided, confirming they contained sophisticated surveillance capabilities. Human rights organizations issued statements demanding investigations. Congress announced emergency hearings, and then came the message I'd been dreading. They found Archer. Get to secure location now. Archer, my oldest friend and former colleague at Quantum, who had helped me gather evidence about Project Oracle. I'd been careful to keep his name out of my disclosures, but Quantum's internal investigation must have uncovered his involvement. I checked out of the hotel immediately, abandoning my careful plan for a new one. If they'd identified Archer, I was no longer operating in theoretical danger. 3 days later, I sat across from Rebecca Winters in a secure location, watching her review the additional documents I kept in reserve, my insurance policy. "This goes even deeper than what you initially shared," she said, scanning the files. "Project Oracle isn't just passive surveillance. They're actively manipulating online discourse in these countries, amplifying certain voices, suppressing others. Digital social engineering," I nodded. "It's not just about identifying dissidents, it's about creating environments where dissent becomes socially unacceptable. And Quantum built this willingly." "Not initially," I explained. "It evolved. First, they sold basic data analytics to these governments for public safety purposes, then enhanced monitoring capabilities for counterterrorism, each step technically defensible, each expansion more intrusive. By the time Oracle became a full-fledged dissident hunting tool, too many people were complicit to turn back, including Brandon Chen. She referenced my former supervisor, who had publicly denounced me as a security risk with a personal vendetta. Especially Brandon, I confirmed. He was the primary liaison with the government clients. When I brought my concerns to him, I was essentially telling the architect that his building was designed for torture. Rebecca set down her tablet, studying me with the practiced gaze of a veteran journalist. Why did you do it, Maya? You had a 7-figure salary, stock options worth millions. You were at the pinnacle of your field. I thought about the question carefully, not because I didn't know the answer, but because the truth was both simple and complicated. My parents came to America from India in the 1980s, fleeing political persecution. I said finally. My father was a journalist who criticized the government during the emergency period. He always told me that technology should liberate people, not imprison them. When I discovered what Oracle was doing, I couldn't reconcile it with anything I believed about my work, my company, or myself. You could have walked away quietly, she pointed out, found another job, left the moral compromise behind, and let them keep hunting people whose only crime was speaking their minds. I shook my head. I spent my career building digital walls to protect people. I couldn't just watch as those same skills were perverted to cage them instead. 1 week after the initial story broke, Quantum Systems stock had lost over $80 billion in value. The company faced investigations from Congress, the SEC, and the Justice Department. Several major clients had suspended their contracts pending review. The personal cost was equally severe. My bank accounts were frozen on dubious legal grounds. Quantum had filed a civil suit against me for breach of contract, theft of proprietary information, and corporate espionage. My professional reputation, at least within the conventional tech industry, was destroyed. Brandon Chen had given interviews painting me as an unstable, attention-seeking employee who had misunderstood legitimate security products. CEO Garrett Wilson had appeared before Congress, offering careful half-truths that acknowledged some international contracts, while denying direct knowledge of how the technology was being used. Then came the breakthrough. An internal quantum whistleblower, someone still inside the company, leaked emails directly contradicting Wilson's testimony. Emails showing he had personally approved Project Oracle's deployment in 2 countries after being explicitly briefed on its capabilities and purposes. The day after those emails became public, I received an encrypted message from an anonymous source inside Quantum. Chen cleaning out his office. Wilson called emergency board meeting. They're burning everything. Thank you for your courage. 3 days later, Garrett Wilson resigned as CEO of Quantum Systems. Brandon Chen was placed on administrative leave. The company announced it was reviewing all international contracts and recommitting to ethical technology deployment. Too little, too late. 2 months after my firing, I testified before Congress, describing in detail how Project Oracle had evolved from basic analytics into a sophisticated tool for tracking, predicting, and neutralizing political dissent. Ms. Krishnan, one representative asked, "Do you believe Quantum Systems leadership fully understood how their technology was being used?" Not only did they understand, I replied, they specifically designed it for those purposes. Project Oracle wasn't a legitimate security tool that was misused. It was created to do exactly what it did: help repressive governments identify and neutralize opposition before it could organize. And when you brought these concerns forward internally, I was silenced, sidelined, and ultimately terminated. The legal battles continue for years. Quantum Systems spent millions trying to discredit me, frame me as a thief and a liar, bury me in litigation. I countered with the support of digital rights organizations, pro bono attorneys, and a court of public opinion. 3 years after becoming a whistleblower, I stood outside the federal courthouse following the settlement announcement. Quantum had agreed to pay $1.2 billion in fines, establish an independent ethics oversight board, and terminate all contracts related to Project Oracle. They had also finally dropped their lawsuits against me. A junior reporter approached cautiously. "Ms. Krishnan, do you feel vindicated?" I considered the question. Vindication implied a personal victory. This wasn't about me. I feel hopeful, I replied instead. Hopeful that technology companies will recognize that building tools of oppression, no matter how profitable, has consequences. Hopeful that more insiders will speak up when they see ethical lines being crossed. What about your career? Your former colleagues say you'll never work in tech again. I smiled slightly. I'm currently consulting with privacy advocacy groups and teaching digital ethics at Berkeley. It turns out there's plenty of work for someone who understands exactly how technology can be weaponized against the vulnerable. Later that evening, I received an email from a name I didn't recognize, but an email server I did, Quantum Systems. I was hired to replace you as security architect. Today they asked me to review a new analytics package for election security in a Southeast Asian country. I remembered your congressional testimony. What should I do? I thought carefully before responding, remembering my own journey from loyal employee to whistleblower, the personal cost balance against the moral imperative. Document everything. Trust no one inside the company. Contact me through secure channels. Then I added, the source code of our lives isn't written in programming languages. It's written in the choices we make when no one is watching and the stands we take when everyone is. Sometimes the most important firewall isn't digital at all. It's the ethical boundary between what we can build and what we should build. In crossing that line, Quantum had corrupted its own source code. In exposing that corruption, I'd finally fulfilled my true role as a security architect, protecting people, not systems. 5 years after the quantum revelations, I published a book titled The Source Code: Ethics and Accountability in the Digital Age. In the acknowledgments, I thanked the unnamed whistleblowers who had followed in my footsteps, exposing similar programs at other technology companies. We have formed an invisible network of conscience within the tech industry. Engineers, designers, and executives united by the belief that technology should liberate rather than control, connect rather than divide, empower rather than oppress. The black SUVs had long stopped following me. The threats had dwindled to occasional online harassment. The legal battles had settled into an uneasy peace. But the work continued, because the source code of technology is constantly being rewritten, and with it the rules of power in our digital society. The question isn't whether technology will change the world, it's whether those changes will bend toward justice or control. And that isn't decided by algorithms or artificial intelligence. It's decided by the human beings who write the code, build the systems, and most importantly, those who are willing to speak when those systems are abused. In the end, the most important code I ever wrote wasn't in Python or C++ or any programming language at all. It was the moral code that finally compelled me to stand up and say, not with my work, not in my name, not while I can still speak truth to power. The boardroom of Meridian Medical Center was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. 12 people sat around the gleaming conference table, but only one was speaking. Your repeated accusations about the Vastor trial have become disruptive and damaging. Dr. William Montgomery, CEO of Meridian and my father-in-law, continued. The board has unanimously voted to terminate your position. I looked around at the faces I'd known for years, colleagues, mentors, friends. Most averted their gaze. Only Dr. Elaine Chen, head of oncology, had the decency to look uncomfortable. Finally, my eyes settled on my husband, Dr. Michael Montgomery, chief of surgery and the rising star of Meridian. He stared at his perfectly manicured hands, a muscle twitching in his jaw. Michael? I said quietly, anything to add? He cleared his throat. Elena, you've been unstable since losing that patient last year. These allegations, they're not based in reality. Dad's offering a generous severance if you agree to counseling. My name is Dr. Elena Rivera Montgomery, and until 10 minutes ago, I was the director of clinical research at one of Philadelphia's most prestigious hospitals. My crime? Discovering that Meridian's flagship drug trial, a cardiovascular treatment called Vasira, was killing patients while the hospital and its pharmaceutical partner falsified data to hide it. I'm unstable. I kept my voice level, professional. The Vasira trial has a mortality rate nearly triple what's being reported. Patient 47 died from catastrophic liver failure, a known side effect you're deliberately concealing. Patient 23's cardiac event was. Enough. William slammed his hand on the table. These accusations are not only unfounded but potentially libelous. The Vassar trial has passed every regulatory review. Because you're hiding the adverse events, I countered, categorizing deaths as unrelated to treatment when they clearly show the toxicity pattern. Security will escort you to clear out your office, William interrupted, nodding to his assistant who stood by the door. Your hospital credentials have already been deactivated. I stood slowly, straightening my white coat, the symbol of the oath I took to do no harm. $97 million, I said quietly. Michael looked up sharply. What? That's how much Medcore Pharmaceuticals has invested in Meridian for this trial. That's what patients' lives are worth to you. Elena, please. Michael finally stood, reaching for my arm. Don't do this. Think about our future. I pulled away. I am. As security escorted me to my office, staff members watched with wide eyes. Meridian was Philadelphia's medical crown jewel, a teaching hospital with cutting-edge research and some of the best physicians in the country. It was also the Montgomery family legacy, built by William's father and destined to be passed to Michael. I had once been proud to be part of this institution, proud to have married into the Montgomery medical dynasty. Now I felt only disgust. My office door had already been relabeled. Inside, boxes waited for my personal belongings. My computer was gone, no doubt being scrubbed of any incriminating research I'd compiled. What they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this day for months, ever since I first noticed the discrepancies in the Vassar trial data. Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway, glancing nervously down the hall before slipping inside and closing the door. They're saying you had a breakdown, she whispered. That the stress of research and clinical practice was too much. Of course they are, I replied, gathering family photos from my desk. It's easier than admitting I'm right. Are you? Her voice wavered. Right, about Basira. I stopped packing and met her gaze. Elaine, you've seen patient 64's liver panels. You consulted on patient 18's case before he died, you know. She looked away. William says those were coincidences, unrelated to the treatment. And you believe that? Or are you just afraid to question it? What happens to Meridian if this gets out? She asked. What happens to all the good we do? What good is that if we're killing patients to fund it? I countered. Security knocked at the door. Dr. Rivera, your escort is waiting. As I left the hospital that had been my professional home for 8 years, I felt surprisingly calm. The deception, the corruption, the ethical compromises, they had been suffocating me for months. Being fired was, in a strange way, liberating. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Where are you going? We need to talk. I ignored it, driving instead to a small coffee shop across town. Dr. Nate Sharma was already waiting at a corner table, 2 cups of coffee in front of him. They finally did it, he asked as I sat down. I nodded. Nate had been my resident when I first joined Meridian. Now he worked for the FDA's Office of Scientific Investigations. Unanimous vote, I confirmed, taking a sip of coffee, my husband included. Nate winced. I'm sorry, Elena. That's rough. Not unexpected, I pulled a flash drive from my pocket and slid it across the table. This is everything. Original lab values, actual adverse event reports, internal emails about reclassifying treatment-related deaths, the statistical manipulation they're using to hide the mortality signal. Nate picked up the drive. You know they'll claim you fabricated this. That it's the work of a disgruntled ex-employee. That's why I've been making copies and documenting the verification chain for 3 months, I replied. Every piece of data has multiple sources, and I'm not the only one who knows, just the only one willing to speak up. The investigation team arrives tomorrow, Nate said. Once this is official, it's going to get ugly. The Montgomerys have powerful friends, Elena. I know, but their friends can't hide 93 patients armed by Vassira, 14 of them fatally. After leaving Nate, I drove to the small apartment I quietly rented 2 weeks earlier. I'd seen enough whistleblower cases to know what was coming. Character assassination, professional isolation, and likely divorce. Michael had chosen his family legacy over medical ethics long ago. He'd just never been tested until now. My phone had 17 missed calls and dozens of texts. Most were from Michael, growing increasingly angry. One was from my mother-in-law, Eleanor. You're making a terrible mistake. William can still fix this if you reconsider. Fix this, as if the problem were my ethics, not their lack of them. I was unpacking my meager belongings when a knock came at the door. Through the peephole, I saw Michael, his hospital tie loosened, his face flushed with either anger or the 3 drinks I knew he'd have had by now. "I know you're in there, Elena," he called. "Your car is outside." I opened the door but blocked the entrance. "How did you find me?" "Credit card statement," he replied, trying to peer past me into the apartment. "What is this place? Are you seriously hiding out in some efficiency apartment when we have a home?" "We have a house bought with Montgomery money, filled with Montgomery furniture, on Montgomery land," I corrected. "I needed somewhere else." "This is ridiculous. Dad is furious, but he's willing to overlook this if you get help. Real help, Elena. You're not well." I studied the man I had loved for 9 years, trying to see any trace of the idealistic doctor I'd met during residency. "When did you first know about Basera, Michael? When did you realize patients were dying and decide to help cover it up?" His expression hardened. "You're twisting things. Clinical trials have adverse events. That's why we do the trials, to find the risk-benefit balance. And when the risks include death, we're supposed to report that, not hide it," I countered. 14 people, Michael. Mothers, fathers, grandparents who trusted us. Who trusted us to pioneer treatments that will save thousands more. He exploded. "This is bigger than a few adverse events, Elena. Vassara could revolutionize cardiovascular medicine. MedCorp has invested nearly $100 million in Meridian, in research that helps real patients every day. So the ends justify the means? Is that the Montgomery medical oath now?" He ran a hand through his carefully styled hair. "You've always been so rigid, so black and white. Medicine requires flexibility. Dad understood that when he built Meridian into what it is today." "Flexibility," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling fraud now?" "Be careful, Elena," he warned, voice dropping. "You're making accusations you can't prove against people who can destroy your career with a phone call." I stepped back. "Goodbye, Michael. I'll have my lawyer contact you about divorce proceedings." "Divorce?" He looked genuinely shocked. "Over a professional disagreement?" "No, over the fact that you chose money and family reputation over patients' lives. That makes us fundamentally incompatible." I closed the door on his protests, leaning against it as tears finally came. Not for the marriage I was losing, that had been dying for longer than I'd admitted, but for how far the idealistic doctors we'd once been had fallen. The next morning, I watched the local news from my apartment as the FDA investigation was announced. Meridian released a statement expressing full confidence in the integrity of our research and concern about the mental health of a former employee making unfounded accusations. By afternoon, the story had reached national news. Michael texted once. "You've gone too far. There's no coming back from this." He was right, but not in the way he meant. Dr. Chen called around dinner time. "They're in full panic mode," she said quietly. "William has lawyers everywhere. They're pulling records, coaching staff on what to say to investigators. But they can't alter the actual patient data." I replied. "Not all of it." "Elena," she hesitated. "I think I need to talk to the FDA too. Patient 71. I treated her seizures last month. They weren't from her pre-existing condition like William claimed." "Do you have documentation?" "Yes. I kept separate notes after our conversation about patient 47. One by one, the dominoes were beginning to fall. Over the next week, I watched from a distance as the investigation expanded. 2 more Meridian doctors contacted the FDA with corroborating evidence. MedCorp Pharmaceuticals announced they were cooperating fully while conducting their own internal review. On day 9, the pharmaceutical company's stock plummeted when an internal email leaked, showing executives discussing how to manage the adverse event narrative. Meridian's public relations team worked overtime, but the damage was spreading. Then came the lawsuit. The family of patient 23, Martin Reynolds, a 57-year-old father of 3, filed the first wrongful death claim against both Meridian and MedCorp. Their lawyer had somehow obtained Mr. Reynolds' actual lab values, showing clear Vassara toxicity that had been omitted from the official trial records. I recognized the lawyer's name immediately. Jessica Winters, my roommate from medical school who had chosen law over medicine. I wasn't surprised when she called me that evening. "I need you as an expert witness," she said without preamble. "You're the only one who saw the whole picture. I'm also the mentally unstable former employee according to Meridian's PR team," I reminded her. which makes you the perfect whistleblower. The more they attack you, the worse they look when the evidence backs you up. I considered this. How many families have contacted you? 9 so far. More calling every day as the news spreads. 9 families seeking justice for loved ones whose deaths had been classified as unrelated to treatment by doctors they trusted. My testimony could help them, but it would also permanently end any chance of my returning to mainstream medicine. The Montgomery's influence reached far. I'll do it, I said finally. But I want to meet the families first. This isn't just about exposing Meridian. It's about making sure they understand what really happened to their loved ones. 2 weeks after my firing, I received a text from Nate, Montgomery Sr. placed on administrative leave. Medcorp CEO resigned. You should turn on the news. The FDA had announced a full regulatory action. The Vassar trial was suspended. Patients were being contacted for follow-up medical evaluations. Criminal investigations were being considered. Michael called later that night, his voice rough with either exhaustion or tears. They're saying Dad could face charges. Criminal charges, Elena. For what? Trying to develop a medication that could save lives. For falsifying safety data that cost lives, I corrected gently. Michael, I never wanted this to hurt you, but you did it anyway, he interrupted bitterly. My father's legacy, my family's hospital, my marriage, all collateral damage in your crusade. No, I said firmly. Consequences of your choices. You knew, Michael. Maybe not everything, but enough. And you chose silence. After we hung up, I sat looking at our wedding photo, the last one I brought from my office. We'd been so young, so certain we would change medicine together. When had he decided that the Montgomery name was worth more than the Montgomery reputation for medical excellence? 3 months after my termination, I testified before a congressional committee investigating pharmaceutical research practices. The hearing room was packed with press, industry representatives, and families of Vassar patients. Michael sat in the back row, watching silently as I detailed the systematic fraud I had uncovered. Dr. Rivera, one congressman, asked, "Why do you think so many respected physicians went along with this deception?" I considered my answer carefully. Medicine isn't immune to institutional corruption. When prestigious names, significant funding, and career advancement all depend on certain outcomes, ethical lines blur. The Vassar trial didn't begin as fraud. It began as hope for a breakthrough treatment, but when that hope collided with disappointing results, decisions were made to protect investments rather than patients. And your own career? You must have known exposing this would essentially end it. I thought about the job offers I'd received since becoming the face of the Vassar scandal. Medical ethics consultant, patient advocacy organizations, even academic positions focusing on research integrity. My career didn't end, I replied. It transformed. As physicians, we pledge to do no harm. Sometimes keeping that pledge requires difficult choices. Later, as I left the hearing room, Michael approached me. He looked older, the Montgomery confidence replaced by something more humble. "The divorce papers are ready for your signature," he said quietly. "Thank you." I studied his face. "How are you doing?" He gave a hollow laugh. "Dad's facing federal charges. The hospital board has removed the Montgomery name from the research wing. Half our staff is looking for other positions. How do you think I'm doing?" "Building something new from the ruins," I suggested. "Isn't that what good doctors do?" He looked surprised. "You still think I'm a good doctor, after everything?" "I think you were a good doctor who made bad choices," I corrected. "The question is what you'll do now." 6 months later, Meridian Medical Center was under new leadership. William Montgomery had agreed to a plea deal, admitting to research fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence. Medcorp Pharmaceuticals faced billions in fines and civil settlements. I was leaving my office at the National Center for Research Integrity, a newly created organization where I now served as medical director, when my assistant mentioned a visitor waiting in the lobby. Dr. Elaine Chen sat nervously, twisting her wedding ring. She stood when she saw me. "Elena, thank you for seeing me. I wasn't sure you would." Of course, I gestured to the chairs. "How are things at Meridian?" "Different," she said. "Better, I think. The new administration has implemented triple verification protocols for all research data. Everything is open access now." "And Michael?" I couldn't help asking. She smiled slightly. "He's running a community health clinic in West Philadelphia. No research, no pharmaceutical ties, just patient care. He's good at it. I nodded, strangely pleased by this news. Why are you here, Elaine? We're establishing an ethics review board at Meridian, she explained, pulling out a folder. Independent physicians and patient advocates with authority to investigate any concerns about research or patient care. We'd like you to chair it. I stared at her in disbelief. You want me, the whistleblower who brought down your hospital's most lucrative research program, to oversee your ethics? That's exactly why we want you, she replied simply. You were right when everyone else was either wrong or silent. We need that voice institutionalized at Meridian. I took the folder, not committing but not refusing. Who proposed this? The board? Michael, actually, she admitted. He said Meridian needs to rebuild around truth, not legacy. As she left, I opened the folder. Inside was the formal invitation, along with a handwritten note from Michael. Some legacies are worth burning down to rebuild properly. This would be your legacy, not ours. Think about it. I placed the folder on my desk, next to the framed copy of the scientific journal article I'd published detailing the methodological failures of the Vassar trial. The article that was now required reading in medical ethics courses nationwide. The Montgomerys had built their legacy on prestige, wealth, and influence. But perhaps the true measure of medical legacy wasn't found in hospital wings bearing family names or lucrative pharmaceutical partnerships. Perhaps it was found in the simple courage to speak truth, regardless of the cost. To stand alone if necessary, armed with nothing but evidence and the conviction that patients deserve better than noble-sounding justifications for ignoble actions. I picked up my phone and typed a response to my ex-husband. I'll consider it. On one condition. We named the ethics board after the 14 patients who died in the Vassar trial. Their legacy matters most. His reply came moments later. I'd already proposed that. It was unanimously approved. Sometimes healing requires first acknowledging the wound, not just for patients, but for medicine itself. And sometimes the most important treatment is simply the truth, administered without compromise, regardless of how much it hurts. Dr. Richard Porter's face drained of color as he flipped through the folder I'd placed in front of him. His manicured fingers trembled slightly, disturbing the careful arrangement of luxury pens on his desk. This can't be right, he muttered, more to himself than to me. There must be some mistake. I ran the tests myself, I replied calmly. Twice. No mistake, Richard. Stage 3 pancreatic adenocarcinoma with vascular involvement. Porter looked up, really seeing me for the first time since I'd entered his office. Dr. Hayes, he said, attempting to regain his composure. I wasn't aware you were handling my case personally. I wasn't supposed to be, I admitted, but when I saw your name on the patient roster, I felt it was appropriate. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. 3 years ago, Richard Porter had stood in this same office, though I had been on the other side of the desk then, and explained with practiced sympathy why Cedars Memorial Hospital couldn't approve my wife's experimental treatment. Insurance limitations, budget constraints, protocol restrictions. His words had been a death sentence delivered with corporate politeness. My name is Dr. Michael Hayes. At 45, I had spent my career in oncology research until my wife Sarah's diagnosis with an aggressive form of leukemia had pulled me back into clinical practice. After her death, I had thrown myself into my work, eventually becoming one of the country's leading specialists in difficult-to-treat cancers. 6 months ago, I had accepted the position of Chief of Oncology at Cedars Memorial, the same hospital where Sarah had died, the same hospital still run by the man who had denied her last chance at survival. Some called it masochism. Others suspected revenge. I preferred to think of it as unfinished business. Well, Porter said, closing the file with forced casualness. I appreciate your thoroughness, but I'll be transferring my care to Memorial Sloan Kettering. I have colleagues there who specialize in pancreatic cancer. Of course, I nodded. That's your right, though I should mention that Dr. Abrams at Sloan Kettering was my mentor. We consult on cases weekly, and he's currently on sabbatical in Switzerland. Porter's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Johns Hopkins then. Dr. Chen. We co-authored the most recent paper on the experimental protocol you'd need. She'd just refer you back to me. A flash of understanding crossed Porter's face. You've been planning this, he accused, a hint of fear breaking through his corporate veneer. You took this position knowing. That eventually every powerful man faces his mortality? I finished for him. No, but I did take this position knowing that I could prevent what happened to Sarah from happening to others. Porter stood abruptly, buttoning his bespoke suit jacket. This is unprofessional. I'll speak with the board about your conduct. By all means, I gestured toward his phone. Though you might want to read page 7 of your file first, the section on treatment options. His hand hesitated over the phone. Curiosity or fear won out. He reopened the file, turning to the page I'd indicated. As you can see, I explained as he read, standard protocols for your specific case have a 17% 5-year survival rate. Not particularly encouraging. Porter's face had gone ashen. And this experimental approach? He asked, pointing to the second option. 83% in initial trials, I said. It's the same treatment protocol Sarah needed. The one you denied as too experimental and not cost-effective. The silence in the room was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. If this is some twisted form of revenge, Porter began. Revenge will be denying you treatment, I interrupted, my voice level. Revenge will be watching you navigate the same bureaucratic nightmare you've created for thousands of patients. Revenge will be easy, Richard. I stood straightening my white coat. But I took an oath. The same one you took before you decided hospital administration was more lucrative than actually treating patients. First, do no harm. Porter sank back into his chair, the reality of his situation finally hitting him. The great equalizer, disease, had brought one of Philadelphia's most powerful healthcare executives to the same vulnerable position as the patients whose care he reduced to numbers on spreadsheets. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. Reform, I replied simply. Beginning with approval of the Compassionate Care Initiative I submitted to the board last month, the one you've been blocking. Full funding for our clinical trials program, and your public support for the policy changes that would prevent insurance denials for experimental treatments when standard options fail. You're blackmailing me. I shook my head. I'm offering you the best medical care available, regardless of costs, exactly what I'd offer any patient. The policy changes aren't for my benefit. They're for the patients who will come after you. I placed a second folder on his desk. This contains the consent forms for treatment, along with the policy amendments I've drafted for the board. Take the weekend to review everything. My team begins the first treatment cycle on Monday morning. As I turned to leave, Porter called after me. Hayes, I paused at the door. If I refuse? I looked back at him, allowing myself a small sad smile. Then you'll receive the current standard of care for someone with your diagnosis and insurance limitations. Nothing more, nothing less. Exactly what Sarah received. The executive wing of Cedars Memorial Hospital had always seemed like a separate universe from the medical floors, all mahogany paneling and tasteful artwork, designed to impress donors and comfort board members who rarely ventured into the actual hospital corridors. Dr. Elena Patel, my deputy and longtime friend, waited for me by the elevator. Well, she asked as the doors closed. He'll agree, I replied, the confidence in my voice masking the turmoil beneath. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. Elena studied my face. Are you sure you can do this, Michael? Treat the man well. Yes, I said firmly. I have to. When Sarah had been diagnosed 3 years ago, I had still been primarily a research oncologist, working on experimental protocols that showed promise for treatment-resistant cancers. Her leukemia had initially responded to conventional approaches, but when it returned aggressively, the only hope had been an immunotherapy trial I'd helped develop. Porter, recently appointed as CEO, had been implementing a new fiscal responsibility framework. Sarah's treatment had become a casualty of his policies, deemed too expensive, too experimental for the hospital to justify to their insurance partners. By the time I had arranged alternative options at another institution, her condition had deteriorated beyond the point of eligibility. I had watched my brilliant, vibrant wife slip away over 6 agonizing weeks. Porter had sent flowers to her funeral, hospital policy for employees' family members. The board meeting is Wednesday, Elena reminded me as we exited onto the oncology floor. A world of beeping monitors, hushed conversations, and the distinct antiseptic smell that no amount of air freshener could disguise. If Porter supports the initiative, we could change everything. When he supports it, I corrected. He doesn't have a choice. Monday morning arrived with the controlled chaos typical of a hospital beginning its week. I had been at Cedars since 5 a.m., reviewing cases and preparing for Porter's treatment. When he arrived, escorted by a private nurse, his typical commanding presence had already diminished, whether from the reality of his diagnosis or the knowledge of his precarious position with me, I couldn't tell. "Dr. Hayes," he acknowledged stiffly. "Richard," I replied, using his first name deliberately. "I see you've met Nurse Okafor. She'll be your primary during treatment." "I've brought the signed paperwork," he said, handing me both folders. "All of it." I reviewed the documents quickly, consent for treatment, and more importantly, his written endorsement of the policy changes I proposed, ready for Wednesday's board meeting. "Excellent," I said, handing the policy documents to Elena. "Let's get you settled and begin the protocol." Over the next hour, Porter experienced the reality most patients face, changing into a hospital gown, surrendering his autonomy to medical staff, becoming a body to be treated rather than a person in control. I explained each step of the protocol in detail, watching as he processed the information not as a hospital administrator but as a frightened patient. "This is the same treatment Sarah needed?" he asked as Nurse Okafor inserted his IV line. "A refined version," I answered. "We've improved the response rate since then." His eyes met mine. Would it have saved her? The question hung in the air between us. 3 years of grief, anger, and professional determination compressed into 6 words. "Probably," I said finally. "We'll never know." The first round of treatment proceeded smoothly. Porter tolerated the initial medications well, and the specialized immunotherapy components were scheduled for day 3. As we concluded, I updated his chart while Elena checked his vital signs. The board chairman called. Elena informed me quietly as Porter dozed. "He's confirmed the special session for Wednesday to review the policy changes." "Good," I nodded. "Everything's proceeding as planned." What I didn't tell Elena was how seeing Porter as a patient, vulnerable, afraid, clutching at hope the same way Sarah had, was affecting me. I had anticipated satisfaction, perhaps even a grim sense of justice. Instead, I felt a complex mixture of emotions that didn't fit neatly into categories like revenge or redemption. Wednesday morning found me standing before the hospital board, Porter seated among them, looking noticeably more haggard than his usual polished self. The effects of Sunday and Monday's treatments were evident in his pallor and a slight tremor in his hands. "The Compassionate Care Initiative," I began, "represents a fundamental shift in how Cedars Memorial approaches cases that fall outside standard treatment protocols. Rather than defaulting to denial based on cost considerations, we propose a multidisciplinary review process that prioritizes patient outcomes over short-term financial metrics." Several board members shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. This philosophy directly contradicted the approach Porter had championed for years. "The data is clear," I continued, displaying slides that showed both medical outcomes and long-term financial implications. "When we invest in innovative treatments, even expensive ones, we not only save lives but ultimately reduce costs through shorter hospital stays, fewer complications, and enhanced institutional reputation." I outlined the specific policy changes, the funding mechanisms, and the oversight committee structure that would ensure responsible implementation. Then, with perfect theatrical timing, I turned to Porter. "CEO Porter has reviewed these proposals in detail and has prepared remarks on their financial viability." All eyes turned to him. This was the moment. Would he honor our agreement or attempt to undermine the initiative he had opposed for so long? Porter rose slowly, the effort clearly taxing him. 3 days ago, he began, his voice less commanding than usual. "I received a diagnosis that many would consider a death sentence. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Few had known of his condition. "Dr. Hayes is treating me with an experimental protocol, one that would have been denied under our current policies." He paused, gathering himself. "The same type of protocol that was denied to his wife under my leadership." The room fell silent. "I have spent my career focused on fiscal discipline and operational efficiency," Porter continued. "Those aren't inherently wrong goals, but they're incomplete. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of why we're here, not to manage a profitable business, but to save lives." He detailed his support for my initiative, emphasizing both its humanitarian and long-term financial benefits. By the time he finished speaking, several board members were nodding in agreement. The vote was unanimous. After the meeting, Porter approached me in the hallway. The board members had treated him with that peculiar combination of deference and pity reserved for the powerful when they fall ill. Their voices a little too loud, their encouragement a little too emphatic. "That went well," he said, attempting his usual authoritative tone but failing to mask his exhaustion. "It did," I agreed. "Your support was convincing." He studied me for a moment. "You know, when I realized what you were doing, positioning yourself to control my treatment, I thought it was about revenge, making me suffer the way your wife did. That would have been easier," I admitted. "Then why this approach? Why help change the system rather than just punishing me?" I considered the question carefully. "Sarah was a structural engineer," I said finally. "She used to tell me that when a building fails, you can patch the visible damage, but unless you fix the fundamental flaws in the framework, it will eventually collapse again." Porter nodded slowly. "And I was a fundamental flaw." "Your policies were," I corrected. "You were just a symptom of a larger problem. A healthcare system that values balance sheets over human lives." We stood in silence for a moment, the hospital continuing its relentless rhythm around us. "Your next treatment is tomorrow morning," I said, turning to leave. "Get some rest, Richard. The protocol is demanding, but the results are worth it." "Hayes," he called after me. "Would you have treated me even if I hadn't agreed to support your initiative?" I paused, considering the question that had haunted me since discovering his diagnosis. The answer mattered, not just to Porter, but to my own understanding of who I had become in the aftermath of Sarah's death. "Yes," I said finally, "because that's the difference between us. You saw Sarah as a budget item. I see you as a patient." 6 months later, Richard Porter stood at the podium in the hospital's main auditorium. Addressing the staff and media gathered for the official launch of the Cedars Memorial Compassionate Care Center, a dedicated wing for patients requiring experimental or specialized treatments regardless of insurance status. His cancer was responding well to the protocol. The latest scans showed significant tumor reduction, and while he wasn't out of danger, his prognosis had improved dramatically. He had lost weight, and his designer suits hung loosely on his frame, but his voice had regained some of its former strength. "This center represents a new direction for Cedars, and we hope, for healthcare institutions nationally," he announced. "Under the leadership of Dr. Michael Hayes, we have already accepted 15 patients who would previously have been denied care under our old policies." From my seat in the front row, I watched the man who had once prioritized profit margins above patient outcomes champion a system built on the opposite philosophy. Was it genuine conversion or simply self-preservation? Perhaps a bit of both. After the ceremony, as staff and board members mingled over catered refreshments, Porter approached me with 2 flutes of champagne. "Sparkling cider," he clarified, handing me one. "My oncologist has strong opinions about alcohol during treatment." I accepted the glass with a small smile. "Your oncologist sounds wise. Occasionally insufferable, but yes, wise." He gestured toward the plaque outside the new center. The board wanted to name it after me, the Porter Center for Compassionate Care. I suggested an alternative. I followed his gaze to the engraved nameplate, the Sarah Hayes Center for Compassionate Care. "I hope that's acceptable," he said, watching my reaction carefully. The gesture caught me off guard. In all the scenarios I had imagined when I'd taken this position, all the ways I had thought this story might end, this hadn't been among them. "Sarah would have appreciated the irony," I said finally, raising my glass slightly, "to unintended legacies." Porter nodded, clinking his glass against mine. "And to second chances, medical and otherwise." Later that evening, I sat alone in my office, looking at Sarah's photograph on my desk. The grief remained a permanent fixture in my life, but it had changed shape over time, less raw, more purposeful. When I had accepted the position at Cedars, many of my colleagues had assumed I was seeking revenge against Porter and the system that had failed my wife. Perhaps that had been part of it, but Sarah had always believed in fixing broken things rather than simply assigning blame for their failure. The center bears the name of treat hundreds of patients who would otherwise fall through the cracks of our patchwork healthcare system. Patients who, like Porter, could receive care based on medical needs rather than financial calculations. It wasn't justice, nothing could truly balance the scales after Sarah's death. But it was something better, something more enduring than revenge. It was change. I tucked Sarah's photo into my bag and turned off the office light. Tomorrow would bring new patients, new challenges, and another treatment session for Porter. The work continued, not just treating disease, but treating the flawed systems that too often determined who lived and who died. In medicine, we're taught that proper diagnosis is the essential first step in effective treatment. What I had diagnosed wasn't just Porter's cancer, but the cancer within the system itself. And sometimes, treating the disease requires starting with the most visible symptom, even when that symptom wears expensive suits and sits behind a mahogany desk.